Just 6 months ago, MrBlack was walking around New York City for hours without doing any approaches because of his approach anxiety. Now, after we worked together for 5 months, he has his first 4 day game lays, and his biggest dating challenge is finding time to see all his regulars. In this interview, he shares how he got his first wins step by step and what lessons he had to learn. If you've been trying to learn Daygame for a while and are still struggling, then this is for you. It's one thing to show big transformations where advanced daygamers are looking back at how they got to where they are, but I want to start showcasing more beginners on how they overcame their biggest obstacles and got to their first daygame lays, because after all, that's where most guys are stuck. As usual, when I have guests on, this podcast episode is audio only, and on top of that, the voice of MrBlack has been changed to preserve his privacy. MrBlack is back. Today, we've done an episode where we talked about your AA, but today we're talking about your whole journey to show what is realistically possible for someone who's already, okay with people, lives an interesting life. How much can you get out of Daygame in just a few months? MrBlack, before we jump in, give us like a short version of, about yourself so that guys know, have a rough idea of what you're like.
Yep. Based in New York City, live in Brooklyn. I'm entrepreneur, also former creative, extreme athlete. I'm Asian, in my 40s, had pretty good success. My past girlfriends were good, pretty hot in my opinion, but, just wanted to, unlock things. And I've always felt like things were kind of, my results were very random, and they were just, sometimes I'd score and sometimes I wouldn't, and I wanted consistency. And so, and I wanted to obviously date hotter girls and find somebody. And then, so that's why I was like, after I had a breakup, that's when I got into Daygame, which was maybe like beginning of the summer. And then, so and then I've been working with you, and that's kind of where I am at in my Daygame journey.
Nice. Yeah, so we worked together for, I think, 5 months, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5, something like that.
Yep.
And when I asked you, hey, so what were the biggest things you had to learn to get where you are? You sent me a list. And so we're going to run through these things, spend a few minutes on each, just to show guys, what does a typical journey look like for like a guy who's learning Daygame to get his, first few Daygame lays. Do you know how many Daygame lays you have right now?
I think 4. Yeah. Wait, maybe it's technically 3, and then I had a 4th one that was from Night Game, though it was more like I met her at we were at like a lounge, like a cocktail lounge, and she was sitting next to me with, that was Night Game technically, but I mean, honestly,
it's a 50-50 one, like
honestly, I'm like using the exact same things that I learned in Daygame to Night Game. So like,
exactly. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah, and I actually do think if you do a mixture of Night Game and Daygame, everything you do in Daygame translates to Night Game. Like when I approach girls during Night Game, I use the exact same opener, I use the exact same stacking. I just go through all of the things, and then once you're, through that, then it's pretty much gonna be. I mean, I guess the difference in Night Game is often you'll try to close and convert like that night, but with this girl, I just like chatted her up, got her number, and then actually had to give her a phone call, and then eventually I got her on the date. And then it was kind of all the things that I learned from a dating perspective, though, like definitely same exact thing, so yeah.
Okay, very nice. So the first thing you had to deal with was approach anxiety. We did a whole podcast episode on that, so let's not go too deep into that, but give us like a 1-minute version of what was your AA like before? What were the biggest things you believed, the biggest things that held you back, and how it is, and what's the end result? Like, how did it look once you overcame it?
AA is definitely the hardest mountain that you have to climb, at least in my opinion. And I guess it's going to differ for everybody. Like going into Daygame, I thought to myself, AA would be the hardest thing, and then after that, it would be easy. Now, that's not necessarily true, okay? But I still believe I was actually, in my opinion, I was still correct. AA is the hardest thing to get over. But I think I'm also naturally a relatively good communicator. I've also used to be a public speaker, so I'm like naturally relatively good at the other stuff. Um, but the AA is where you're going to have to deal with the most fear. You're going against like base human conditioning. So it is really hard. And if that's not to say that all the other stuff isn't very valuable, because all of it actually is, because having the structure is the key to allow you to relax so your vibe can be good. So then you can actually get the girl on the date. But like, if you can't open, then none of this other shit matters.
So
None of this other
what
shit
was your
matters.
AA like? What was your AA like in the beginning?
Yeah, it was awful. I mean, I'd walk around for hours and not even approach at all, and then I'll walk around and do one approach and then two approaches, then three approaches. And then I was like, all right, Robert's like, you got to do fucking 10 approaches. I'm like, shit, And I think it was especially hard because I didn't do in person. I know that a lot of people work with you and they do in person. This is me just wandering around the streets of New York, thinking I'm fucking weirdo and shit, but then being like, all right, I'm fucking doing it. But I'm glad, and I think that your emphasis on volume is really key. And all the little tips that you gave me were very, 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 it's hard to imagine I would have gotten that to that level of volume and to that level of comfort, without your guidance. And so I got to a point where I'm like, I was doing, I think there was even a session where I did like nearly 20 sets in one session,
Yeah, yeah.
So you definitely can work through it, but you just need to like devote time to it. You need to get over and destroy your own ego. You need to just have the right mindset, and I think that's what's going to help you get through it.
Yeah, and you got through it pretty fast. I mean, in a few weeks, you were already like approaching consistently a few weeks later, and things were running good. But okay, you overcome AA, and if people want to learn more about that, then they can just search for MrBlack on my YouTube channel. They'll find the previous podcast episode where we went in depth about exactly how you did it. But so the next things, what were the next things you got to learn? You said you mentioned pre-opener and opener, and kind of having that as a big thing you had to learn. So, well, what was that all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the the biggest struggle that everybody has, besides just like going and just having the balls to go out and fucking say hi to a girl, is like, what do I say after I say hi, And so it's interesting how technical it has gotten, that you need to actually do a pre-open before you open, right? Because there's going to be this moment when the girl's like, what the hell is going on, right? And so that's where the pre-opener is really important, so that they have time to process and even understand like what the hell is going on. So, obviously there's different ways you can structure it, but something along the lines of, hey, sorry, I just noticed you from over there, and you have to make sure to talk really slow because she's going to be slowly kind of digesting it, right? And then you say, oh, but I just wanted to say hello because I thought you were cute. And then you have to go straight into, and what I noticed about you is, and then you go into the stacking, right? So it just seems like a few innocuous lines, but like if you don't have all of those elements together, if you're missing any of those elements, it all kind of falls apart, right? Because if you don't do that, those lines of, oh, and speak slowly, like, hey, oh, I noticed that you were walking, I noticed you from over there, and you just go straight into, hey, I just want to say hi. She's going to be just caught off guard, and she's not going to have time to process like what's going on. And then she just be like, she doesn't even hear you. She's still taking her headphones out of her ears. Right.
Yeah.
And then you open, right. But then you definitely have to also then say, and what I noticed about you is, because otherwise she's going to be like, oh, thank you. And then just keep going. Right. And then of course, there's a whole like, the physical aspect of like doing the open properly, giving her enough space, right? Eye contact, all these things. So it seems simple in concept. In me saying all of these things, I'm sure a lot of you guys are like, oh, I could do that. But like the actual practice of doing it, executing it all together, just takes a lot of reps. And you combine it with the AA that you're feeling. Even to this day, like I'll approach and I'll be like, oh fuck, I forgot to say, and what I noticed about you is, and then she goes by and then you're like, I got to still do it. Right. So the interesting thing I found about game is like you can, and this is where all the reps and the volume comes into play, is that you develop this structure and you try to be as structured as possible, but it's really hard to consistently execute perfectly on all these elements of the structure just because there's all these variables that are constantly changing, right? Like your own personal vibe and your own personal mood, the vibe of the girl too, right? Like if the girl is feeling anxious and nervous, that anxious, nervous energy rubs off on you and makes you, and affects the way that you react to her, right? So like there's all these variables. So every set is slightly different and you can try your best to like adhere to that structure. Um, and it almost seems to me that like the key to good game is just like the consistency, being able to like consistently like execute on your game in spite of all these changing variables, but then also adapting it and making it, adapting it appropriately to the girl, right? So it's this mixture of like consistently following the framework, but then being able to adapt adequately to suit the needs of that specific girl for that specific set.
Yeah, that's actually very accurate. That's how you get to like a level of like a very good beginner. That's like the top level beginner stuff is when you're getting laid more or less consistently. It maybe gets you, yeah, you need to do quite a few approaches to get the lays, but you're getting consistently. And actually you get there by doing exactly what you're telling, what you're talking about, by being able to execute even when she's, has a bit of a weird vibe, and you have to be able to, like, it can't rub off on you. You have to stay in your element, in your vibe, with your energy, and then it works. Yeah, you're very accurate on that. But when people develop kind of further, like this sort of becomes like an autopilot thing. But it takes a lot of work to get there. Like it takes months and months to get to that level where, oh, I don't really, like, I don't care about that. But yeah, that takes it takes a lot of. But it's just actually, if you keep doing the same thing that got you to this point, if you keep doing them more, you're actually very soon, like, it becomes easy. It becomes like second nature. So that's
Well,
not that.
it's a funny thing though, because I mean, we had to deal with this for me as well. It's like it becomes so second nature, then you become robotic, and then you start having issues in that front, right? Because there was this, and then I hit another stretch where I was like feeling super good vibe, and I was going out and I was like, dude, I have such good vibe, and I'm just approaching, and it's like, it's, I feel like I'm executing on the plan, but then I just wasn't getting the results. And then, that's when you're like, okay, maybe you just need to mix up exactly how you open, and you got to mix up, like who you're approaching and all of that. And then I was able to turn that around, right? But it's this weird game that you're playing where you need consistency and you need to do the same thing, but you can't do it too much of the same thing. Otherwise you run into issues. So yeah.
Exactly. This is also very, very accurate. And the thing is, sometimes people become robotic, and you might think you have a great vibe. You might think you're doing everything perfectly. And it's very hard to see that. And then you kind of hit a wall where nothing works. But we basically turned this around. I think in like the next session you went out and things were working. But okay, so you fixed the beginning of a set. You learned that. And then you said the next thing you had to learn was stacking.
Yep. Yep. Just the stacking, and the storytelling, I guess they kind of go hand in hand, right? But this is the meat of the attraction, right? This is like probably the most important part. Like you mentioned, it's the hardest and takes the longest to learn. So, this definitely, well, I think this whole section is like a interesting one, because when you have, and I think it's going to differ for everybody, right? But like when well, first of all, the most important thing is that you have structure here so that you always have something to fall back on, right? Because I think in this stage, like, so a lot of it is your vibe and being able to like relax. Okay. Because that's what because here, what you're trying to do is you're trying to spike her attraction. And in order to do that, you need this kind of playful vibe. You're kind of going in and you're like, having this accusatory tone with her, like, you're doing, you're up to no good, like, you're spiking them, you're teasing them. So the vibe is really important here, but it's really hard to have good vibe and to be relaxed if you don't know what to say. So if you're just like pulling shit out of thin air, it's kind of hard. So having your kind of, I think this was one of the biggest things I learned from you is just having your storytelling, your three things, um, having your example where you're going to basically, if you're, three things like, you're going to just talk about like storytell about your profession and then turn it into something about how, yeah, that must mean you're going to be partying all the time, right? That's the classic three things, right? And then
Yeah.
following from that, you have the whole, oh, so if you are you work in marketing, then your dream must be, yeah, you go into that whole thing, right? And so just having those in your back pocket allows you to just relax a lot more because then you can always kind of revert to those. And so what I found was important to me is I kind of had this like these several sets of generic stacks and storytells and teases that I would use that would be really broadly applicable to a wide range of people. And so that I always felt like I could fall back and rely on. And then because I was able to go back and fall back and rely on those, um, if my vibe was right, it was very super easy for me to then start customizing and tailoring my teases just off of just like improvising, right? And so the key to improvisation is just being relaxed, right? You look at the top, comedians who go into like improv shows. I mean, I've never done any of it, right? But they're, somebody that I like to watch to get me primed before I go out is I'll listen to like Trevor Wallace. He has these hilarious like dates that he goes on with Sarah, whatever. She's like an influencer, and basically he's just talking shit for 20 minutes straight in a romantic like context, and he's saying these extreme like stupid dick jokes, and you're just like blown away by like how stupid he can be, but how hilariously funny he can be, and like that's what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to like relax into that vibe where just like whatever random weird extreme shit comes into my head, like I want to be able to have that sense of flow and relaxation. And then that comes out in my sets and in my vibe when I'm doing that. Right. And I almost got to a point. And the funny thing is like, how do I describe this? It's like it's like when you get into that flow, when you're kind of in this zone, it's like it just is so easy to just like I would have sessions where I'm just like, oh, I just feel unstoppable and I can just like go and do this endlessly, right? But that actually got me into trouble too. Because then after hook point, I would just keep going down and I would just be too much. And I guess, that's the age old problem. You become an attraction monkey and then you don't like ground, you don't do enough of the comfort, and then you get these fizzy sets and then they don't go anywhere, right? So it's like this is where the structure is so important, and this is where I could imagine people would potentially lose, which is why I'm glad I got the coaching, right? You could just lose years just going down this rabbit hole and be like, man, I'm so good at flirting, and these girls are just like
Yeah.
reacting to me great, and then but they don't go, you're just like, what the fuck, man? Like I've
Yeah.
gotten these responses are so good, but I'm not going anywhere. And so that's why, you gotta get to hook point. And then after you get to hook point, then you have to, it's like an intoxicating drug. Then you have to like switch it off and then go into comfort. And then you just tone things down and you get to know her. But that's like a weird thing to do because it's so tempting to just be like, I just want to stay in, because it's an ego boost, like you're making this hot girl just like laugh. You're just like, dude, I feel like a god, I'm like, but that's what you have to do. And it's kind of trippy.
100%, man. I love how when you learn storytelling, you were so deliberate about it. You had like a list of stories. Hey,
Yep,
if she's
exactly.
like from this place, I think you had like upstate, and like you had a few options for where she's from. You had a few options for what she does, and you had like a perfect story for each of them, and you were executing it religiously. And that kind of, from what I understand from what you're telling me right now, is that's what let you relax and then start having some fun, like adding on top of these stories, like, improvising a little bit when possible, and then just vibing with the girl. Yeah. And you're absolutely right with how people waste so much time because they become so good at attraction, and it is addicting. It's addictive because you see these amazing reactions from girls, and you're just like, oh, I just gonna keep doing this, and then they all flake. Was there anything specific that you remember that really helped you build comfort with girls, or not really?
I think the hardest thing here is there's like several layers to it. Like, number one, I think it's just like it's a weird thing, but like, and this is what I'm talking about, like adhering to the structure. But like, you'll go into comfort mode, and then you'll start talking about her, but then you'll just like do little things, like you'll just be like, oh wait, I forgot to say where I'm from, and you're just like, I forgot to say what I do, right? I forgot to. It's just like really simple stuff like that, but it happens all the time. Where at the end of the set, I'm like, oh, I forgot just like that one detail. It's this really weird thing because like, like when you get sucked into a conversation, it can be hard to have that like meta level, like third person view of yourself. Like, did I do all these things? Right. So having that checklist, okay, you got to talk about where you're from, what you do, what was she up to? Maybe it was something that she's into. Right. And like, it's hard to have that mental checklist sometimes because you're just like, okay, I feel like I'm just doing comfort. Like I'm doing comfort, but like you just forget, oh, I forgot to say this about myself. I forgot to say this about myself. I forgot to say this about myself. And then you also want to really think about like how to craft those stories and those things that you say about yourself so that they are compelling. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is about delivering value, right? And so if you're not, you got to make sure that you deliver value in a meaningful way, especially in New York City where the competition is just insanely high, right? Like, so it's really hard to like get all those things together. But yeah, it's really about just it's really all about just like you need to really have this like checkbox of like, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Right?
Yeah.
While maintaining this like fun vibe that it just makes the conversation feel totally improvised and magical and out of thin air, right? And
It is,
serendipitous.
yeah. You're very accurate about this. Actually, this is why I love working with you, because you have like so much potential. You're already a social guy. You're bringing a lot to the table in terms of, let's call it like sexual market value. You're bringing a lot to the table. You're a cool dude. But then I really hope you keep going with this, because once again you put in a bit more volume, these things that you're talking about that are like, they're really hard in the beginning, but they become easy. Like, later you're able to be in a set, run the set, and at the same time look at it from a side and like, hey, have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? And you're sort of just thinking, hey, and then you are like, hey, where do I want this conversation to be like 3 minutes from now? And what should I talk about right now to bring it there? And like, hey, how do I find out whether she has an adventurous side? Hey, is there like a chance for a same delay? So I think you have like a really, really good potential to cracking all of these things. But okay. And then you had a few more things you had to learn about the texting and dating. So maybe let's start with texting. What were the biggest lessons you had to kind of learn about texting?
Yeah, texting is definitely one of the hardest things. It's one of the most nebulous things because especially in New York, I mean, in New York City, literally there's something going on every single night, you know, and there's, you know, there's parties, there's art shows, there's the girl want to her friends, the other guys, every girl's on app, whatever. There's like literally a million things going on, and everybody's super busy. So like, texting is just, it feels like one of the hardest parts, right? So it's just about, the hard part is even just like getting yourself to do it, right? Because it really disrupts your day. Because you have to be like, you got to focus on work and shit. And then at the same time, you got to juggle like, oh man, I got to text this girl. I got to like keep this fish on the line, right? Like I went on 3, 4 first dates over the past couple weeks, and I just totally let them drop off because I'm just like, I'm too busy with work, and I'm just like, but, but it was just me being lazy, right? Like maybe if I'd put more effort into it, like it would have been, I could have converted it, but I was just like, dude, this is, sometimes you get to a point where you're like, I got to focus on my life. But this is the hardest part, right? So you gotta learn how to ping. You gotta learn how to like just talk random dumb shit, right? And then you gotta like, you just gotta like constantly text and then get them out. And I feel like like, you're just gonna lose. This is the hardest thing that I think people just need to wrap their heads around. You're just going to lose so many leads that you thought were on and that you thought were perfect, but just because of texting. Like I think on the last podcast, I talked about how, yeah, I met this OnlyFans model and she was super on. And then like and I was like, dude, this is going to happen for sure. And then, like I think the next day I was like, I had a date with her, but then something came up with her because her friend was in trouble. So she couldn't meet up. And then it just all fell apart. And I'm just like, dude, like what the hell? Like I was it was like so clearly it was good, but then it just all crumbles during the texting. And there's a certain element of it that like you can't control. There's only so much you can do. But I think that's part of the day game process is you just need to be, you just need to be ready to eat a bunch of shit. And that's what's just going to happen.
Well, honestly, in a chat, whenever someone says, "Oh yeah, it's definitely going to happen with this girl," at this moment, it's like an inside joke for the OG guys.
Right.
Because we've seen all the OG guys have seen everyone else, including some of the OG guys, go through that phase of, "Oh, this is definitely going to happen," and then it just doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's this huge disconnect between getting a girl's number and getting her out on a date. I was like, what, dude? That's what keeps you going, right? I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting numbers of like catwalk models. I'm getting numbers from OnlyFans models and all this. And then it's like, can you get them on a date? And then can you actually get laid? That's another thing.
Yeah, like a good conversion rate from number to date is getting 1 date out of 5 numbers, and that's good. Yeah, that's a good conversion. And the last thing I want to ask you, what were the things you learned about running your dates specifically?
I think the biggest things were, the seating is, because I usually even before day game, like once I got a girl on a date, I was decently confident, because you just vibe and then, but things like the question game helps, right? There are definitely little things. I was always before the mindset of like, why don't I just pick one venue? But, I do now agree that like changing, doing 2 venues is useful. And then the hardest thing is just the seating and then the pull, it all comes down to that, building up attraction, to do that. But I mean, the body language, the escalation, that's always kind of come naturally to me. And once the girl's at my place, the escalation from there has always come naturally to me. But I think the thing that I still am working on and I need to do a better job of is just like seeding that pull and then making that pull happen. I think it's the biggest thing, but it's all kind of like what I'm realizing more and more is it's all kind of cumulative. If you do everything right from your initial set to the first venue to the second venue, if you do all of that well, then you've built up enough attraction, and then she's going to be down to come over. Now, the whole game, I think, is also like reading her and being like, it's going to take 1 date. Is it going to take 2 dates? Is it going to take 3 dates? Some of my lays were date 1. Some of them were date 5, or 4, or I think one of them was 4, right? That was the longest I went. And that's just naturally what's going to happen, right? And so I think the trick there is just, you have to calibrate to each girl to gauge like how comfortable she is and whether she's ready. But then the weird thing you have to do is you have to like push harder than you think you need to push, right? And I feel like I burned several leads because I tried to push too hard for the date because I pulled on the first date and came over, and then I had LMR, and then that kind of like killed it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
wasn't able to overcome it. But like, but you do got to try, right? You do got to try, and then that's just part of the game. So,
Yeah, in the beginning, a lot of guys, they're going too slow, they're escalating too slow, and then they kind of lose the girl because just too many dates, and then she just whatever, finds something better to do, and so in the beginning, it's a good idea to go a little bit faster, but then over time, you learn to, hey, when do I push, when do I slow down, and that's how you actually get laid fast with like real good girls who have never done stuff like that before, never slept with someone they don't know, never slept with anyone on first date, and then you get a same day late with a girl like that. And but
mm-hmm.
that's those are like the small things where you learn to calibrate things. But that's why I think that's why I kind of introduced the thing where we write date reports in a chat so that it's usually very obvious. Like when someone writes, "Hey, this is what happened on a day, step by step." It's usually the mistakes are usually very obvious, at least the big ones, and they're very easy to fix. So I kind of try to implement that in the chat as the way to fix it. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, is there anything else that you think is worth for the guys to know? Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I think the biggest thing is, I mean, my biggest hurdle, and it's the one that I haven't fully solved, that I think everybody should think about though, is just understanding the commitment necessary to get results in day game. It is a full on endeavor, right? So like, running a business is also a full on endeavor. And then also having have a large social network, I have a lot of friends, like I have a lot of hobby, like something has to give. That's the really hard thing, so you got to make sacrifices. Uh, and but here's the way I kind of rationalized it in my mind. And obviously I'm only, 6 months into my journey, right? But like, new skill acquisition is where you're going to have this huge, massive, like, consumption of mind share, right? Just because when you're learning something new, especially something as hard and daunting as day game, you kind of do have to like put everything aside and let things wither to an extent, right? And I'm playing catch up right now with my business because I did that. But I also feel like I got my game to a level where I'm like, oh, I understand the basic structure now, right? I understand it. I know how to execute on this. So then after that initial period when you have to like invest and you have to be all in on it, hopefully I'm going to be able to get to a point where it's this more measured, happy medium. And I mean, I definitely saw that from like my first couple months to like, the last couple months when I've been doing it. Right now, I can be much more like, all right, I'm just going to go out, and it doesn't have to be this all-consuming thing. Because in the beginning, you're like reading all this material, you're studying, you're practicing, you're all this build up of like, I'm going to go and do these approaches, and then you go and do it. It just is exhausting and time-consuming, but it gets better over time, right? And then hopefully I'm going to be able to get to a point where it just is something that you could easily integrate into your life. And it doesn't have to be this all consuming thing. Cause that would be hard unless this is your thing that you want it to be all consuming. And I know that there are guys that is what they want to do, but I want to live like a balanced life. So I'm trying to figure out that balance myself. But
Yeah.
I think people should not overestimate how much of a commitment you need to make, but depending on where you are in your life, that commitment could very well be worth it. And I don't have any regrets about making this commitment, So I will say that.
Yeah, I think the moment you're looking for is we've talked about is the moment you're looking for is kind of when you get to 8 lays. That's where it usually kind of the balance shifts because you get to that level where, okay, I understand how this works, and then you start having a bit more fun. You start to you discover your strong sides in the game, and you kind of lean into them, and then it also starts working better, and you start seeing yourself from the side, and you remember about all these things that you have to do. So and it's a very beautiful moment because, yeah, then it becomes sort of more natural, like you can make it part of your life more easily without, devoting, like at least 6 hours a week for approaching, plus texting, going on dates, plus studying content, all of that stuff. Yeah. But dude, thank you very much for sharing your story. I'll let you get back to your workday and I will wrap up mine. Thank you very much, Mr. Black, for doing this.
All right, cool. Hope this was helpful to some guys, and yeah, thanks for giving me all the tips, Robert. I appreciate it.
If you want me to help you learn Daygame just as I did with Mr. Black, you'll find all the details about my coaching program in the link in description, how it usually works, the approximate pricing, etc. There you'll also be able to schedule an intro call where we will get to know each other, talk about your Daygame a little bit, and listen to a few of your recorded sets together so you can already learn about the mistakes you're making and how you can start fixing them. Again, all the information is in the link in description. That's it for this time. See you in the next podcast episode. Ciao, guys.